Africa Science Dialogue, closing the gap between science and society.
Hello, this is the Africa Science Dialogue. We are here once again, and today, a very exciting guest with me, Professor Priska Mugabe, all the way from Zimbabwe, an associate professor from the University of Zimbabwe. She's a lot of experience, nearly 4 decades, I'm not even 4 decades old, of experience in university teaching, research, community outreach services, academic leadership, networking processes, and institutional governance. She has researched on rangelands, land reform impacts, climate change adaptation, sustainable livelihood systems, and One Health. And she was areas to transform frontier conservation areas. And that's what we're going to be talking about with Professor, who is right here with me. Professor, how are you feeling today?
I'm very well, thank you. And
thank
yourself?
you for joining us. I'm very well.
Thank you.
I am very interested in knowing about rangelands. I am sure it's not a term that is very common out here. So, Prof, what do you do specifically?
What do I do? I'm, like you highlighted area, I teach and research and network in the space of rangelands. So basically, when we're talking of rangelands, at a very common space, they are the grazing areas. That's basically what most people associate rangelands with. So these are open, vast pieces of land which are primarily used for grazing. But however, beyond grazing, it's about understanding what type of animals are grazing, what type of people are using them, what are the interactions between the components of rangelands. So the basic components would be your soil systems, your vegetation, your water systems, and the animals. And a lot of organisms that you don't even see with the naked eye. They all form part of that. So rangelands are very complex systems with a lot of interactions, depending on what is set in your context. So the interactions vary and the interactions can be, but they are primarily a source of livelihoods.
Okay.
For different communities, for different stakeholders.
Okay. And I'm thinking, therefore, you interact with a lot of people, you interact with a lot of animals, I will say, as you're studying them. So what mainly are you usually telling them? Do you advise the people on how to graze, on what to do? What is the importance of that to the people that you interact with?
So coming from academia, being researchers, in terms of our understanding, because the one big concern with rangeland ecosystems is when they get degraded. They lose their integrity in terms of the health of the soil, the health of the vegetation, the health of the animals, and ultimately also the health of the people who are using. So our role as researchers is to try to understand those systems of health, not just from one narrow lens, but to say how does everything contribute to when we say it's a healthy rangeland ecosystem. Healthy for who? Healthy for what? So our role is to try to define those interactions and to define systems, co-define systems with the communities of how do we perpetuate these rangelands in a healthy state, so that one generation from the other, we still benefit from all those. For example, for a villager living in a context of a rangeland, they are using rangelands to gather some food, some fruits, some herbs, some mushrooms, some medicines, water, cultural sites. For their burials, some people would only associate rangelands, burials, if it happens in certain parts of that rangeland. So you look at them as socio-economic, cultural, political systems. But at the core of it, they are ecological, they are biological. So as you can see, that's a very complex definition. And you need people who follow through, understanding from all perspectives, whether you are a wildlife conservation community or whether you are a crop farming community. what is your interface? And then in relation to the animals that might be coming to an area from a protected area instance, how do you interface with that? How do you manage that interaction? What does it mean for your livelihoods? So that is our role as academia.
Okay.
Yes.
To even get you better, I would like top of mind scenario of one incident that you feel probably you remember that has probably that was challenging for you trying to get into communities. Because I spoke with a social anthropologist yesterday, and she was telling me about getting to these communities and facing those beliefs, cultural beliefs and norms and misinformation and everything, and the difficulty there is to that. So you are defining these interactions. Do you have instances that come top of your mind that you can tell us probably one very difficult instance of you trying to define something to a society that is resistant to paint the picture better?
Recently, I think a year or so ago, I was part of a team that went around the country of Zimbabwe within the Ministry of Environment, Wildlife and Climate, wanting to understand what really was happening in terms of human-wildlife conflict. What constitutes that conflict? Who is conflicted? How does it affect the people? And also, how does it affect the wildlife? You try to understand that. And so we had opportunities to listen to community members giving their narratives. And then you realize the conflict with wild animals does not just end with people being eaten by an elephant or by a crocodile, but also it affects how young children access education. Because, like, if you were in the session that we just had, you talk of wildlife corridors, where animals naturally move from one part of the landscape to the other. And if your school happens to be in that corridor, then you expect to have some interactions.
Yeah.
We've heard stories of baboons that learn that, students pass this way. They carry backpacks. They carry lunch boxes. And they go there and smash away the lunch boxes from these kids. That's just one element. Yeah. You have young women or whatever age of women in their reproductive ages, they want to access maternal care, but they live out there in the wild. And if your time to give birth comes at night, can you just go to the hospital? Because it's at night, the animals are out. You hear of people who are trying to grow crops in that interface. We call it the interface area, where you have wildlife, maybe in a neighboring protected area, and you have people who live around there. And these people are living there not because they are irrational. It has a colonial context to it. Some people were moved to those peripheral areas during colonialization, or that's where they've always lived as a people. So you're trying to grow crops and you have animals in the protected area. They'll come for your crops. They'll come for your goats. They'll come for even water sources. And then you have a conflict in that you kind of are helpless in some way. So how you deal with that conflict is to say, what is the common resource that is bringing together these animals and the people? Sometimes it's water. Sometimes it's the grazing, the feed resources. Yes. So what is it that you can control as governance systems, as local systems? What is it that you can control? What is it even as a village community? What is it that you can control? Because you can't have a conversation with elephants, can you?
No, you cannot.
You cannot.
Yeah.
But we want to coexist with nature. We value the elephants. We value all the animals in the wild. But how do we create a system of coexistence? And we are saying rangelands, for me, are the matrix or the platform or the stage on which all these interactions are happening. Yes. So like I said the other day, you cannot talk of rangelands on their own and say, now we are talking about rangelands, the grasses, the plants, the microbiome, biomes in the soil, the water systems, and then we'll talk about the animals. You can't do that because they are all interconnected systems. Yes.
I'm wondering, well, that's a very, very good explanation. Now, it feels even easier to ask the next question. It feels like there are a lot of interventions that you have to take to some of these situations because probably you are researching to find a better way of handling the conflict.
Exactly.
And stuff like that. Do you feel like with the so many issues that our governments are dealing with in Africa, and we've been looking at, we were discussing misinformation and disinformation and saying it's a very big issue that we don't even think about at first because there are so many other issues the governments have to look at. Is this usually a priority issue for governments to fund research into that, to implement some of the recommendations that you give, seeing as some of these communities you're interacting with are probably far-flung and these are...
I would say our governments are very much aware and they do prioritize these systems because the rangelands, the wildlife systems form part of our heritage. And if you look carefully at even the Africa we want and all these development strategies, there's a lot of emphasis on our heritage. So we need the wildlife. We need the wildlife systems. We need the natural systems. We need our humans to coexist. So there are examples, many, many examples, even our management authorities that look at our national parks, a lot of effort in pure basic science activities that are there to understand what does it mean? What does it mean for animals that live out there in the world? What does it mean when they relate with interact with human beings? So there's a lot of investment into research, into personnel. There's also a lot of investment into the communities that have to interact with wildlife systems. How do you make their lives better? How do you make their livelihoods less dangerous so that somebody can grow the food that they want to grow without fearing that a big animal will come from the wild and eat what I've produced? But also, how do you make them understand the importance of that interconnectedness of humans and nature? So there's a lot of investment, not just at local country levels such as Zimbabwe, but I'll give you an example of the transfrontier conservation areas that have been established. We recently celebrated 25 years of the formation, and as you would know, in SADC alone, we have more than almost 20 or above, around 15 or so transfrontier conservation, where people are saying, because this is so complex, your wild animals do not choose passports. They don't need passports to move from one landscape to the other. So they'll move from Namibia, Mozambique, Botswana, Zimbabwe, depending on their daily requirements, on their seasonal requirements. So the countries at that level have come together and formed these systems of co-managing wildlife resources so that you cooperate as different countries with the same goal of really the coexistence of humans and nature. But what is it that we can do in terms of scientific capacity, in terms of technical capacity, in terms of livelihood for the human beings? So there's a lot of effort, I would say, yes.
I'm wondering now, hearing about this, do the communities resonate with what you do to a level that you feel like that there is palpable change? Or do they feel like they have lived like this for way too long, that they have, are they very resist the recommendations or some of the efforts that you're making?
I think to start with, it's a bit of a discomfort when we talk of, do communities do this? Do they do this? They are part of that systems. So I think the starting place is to look at them as a core part of that system and then understand, like you are saying, but how have they organized themselves around those resources? What would be their preferences? What are their needs? Can they communicate? Can we give them space to communicate? I know of communities that sometimes people call indigenous community, like that have been in an area. They will tell you they've got their way of managing what resources, what forage resources, seasonal changes, the water resources, they've got their way. The trick is for the scientific community, the political community, the local government community to come together with what the communities know best. And there's always the effort to interface science and indigenous practices, indigenous knowledge. And our communities, they appreciate their environments. They appreciate their natural heritage resources. It's just a matter of engaging in meaningful, honest, and just dialogue and conversations with them to say what is the best way. For instance, our national park systems would provide with them with maybe even communication systems to say if there are problem animals in your area, you can alert us, and then we can come and help each other to say how do we deal with this issue of a problem animal. So I would say, the system has been created for active collaboration, active engagement with the people who live at the front line of those resources. Yes.
I think that co-creation is really important.
Yes.
But there's something else you want to say?
Yes, and I wanted to say, you then go beyond that traditional system to say, these are people who, as a culture, I think African people are very proud of being able to grow our own feed. That's something that you should not remove from people, depending on their context. If they were an agro-pastoral system, they grow crops, they keep livestock. That's core. So how best do we support that? And so we have a lot of programs where say you support the livelihoods of people. So that they don't have to drive their animals into very far away places for grazing, and do in their community, so that they can live the lives that they want to live, but in interaction with those live and wild animals. So that's where the research and development activities come in. How do you support livelihood activities? How do you support even their water, access to water, for instance, using solar energy to provide pumping facilities for water. You want, when you have wild animals interacting with livestock, sometimes you have transmission of diseases from wild populations, for instance, tuberculosis, where you have buffaloes, cattle, can end up with in people. How do you manage that? You can't vaccinate all heads of buffaloes. But what can you do at the community level? So
what can you do?
Manage the interaction, but even manage your own wildlife population. Sometimes if the disease is such that you can vaccinate, then you should vaccinate your own, so that you boost the immunity systems of those. So you are working with what you can manage best, and also getting the communities. I like the fact that there's a lot of capacity building in terms of even surveillance of disease, so that the communities know what to look out for, when to look out for it, how to report, and how to get assistance if they suspect that there's a disease outbreak, or there's a potential issue of disease being transmitted. Yes.
And sometimes I think there are extreme conditions that might force communities to knowingly do what probably wasn't recommended. And like, for example, last year we had this drought because of climate change, and there was culling of wildlife and stuff. So how do you deal with such situations where now the communities probably feel they have to take matters into their own hands, probably disregard some things and go into those places and do what you wouldn't want them to do, cross the boundaries?
I think for me, I will repeat that it's about building a long-term relationship of core appreciation and core understanding of that resource. So that then you have scenarios where people know that if we have a drought, this is what happens. The feed available for the animals, even the opportunities for some diseases to be spread. And so I think it's not something that we then start doing in a drought. We know that in Africa, in Southern Africa, they're starting to have a pattern of this variability in climate. So we want capacity building in our community. So we both appreciate what to anticipate in any scenario. If, for instance, I know we have early warning systems to say this coming season will be a normal, above normal rainfall season or normal, below normal, how do the communities, how should they interpret that information in terms of their livestock management systems, in terms of their crop production systems? Yes. So I think it's all about continuous engagement, continuous capacity building, but in a fair and just way, without you coming and telling them, this is what you do, this is where you should stop. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Get them the understanding so they are part of that natural ups and downs in terms of supply of resources within the natural system. Yes.
And I feel like when you speak about co-creation, I completely agree with it. And also the fact that it's long-term trust.
Yes.
I'm wondering, for political systems, as we know them in Africa, most of the leaders are looking at very short-term goals because you're looking at your personal re-election, you're looking at what benefits you in that moment. Do you feel, and you said the governments are aware, but I feel like they keep changing very rapidly. People keep changing and probably the ideas change with the people. Do you feel like there is any sustainable kind of, can I say, policies that finally get, like formulated for such, or do you have to keep on running up and about to convince every new political
that's a difficult one in terms of the political space, but my honest take at that is that now our government systems appreciate what happens when you have a real bad drought. And then now you have to feed millions and millions of people. So I think the governments, in spite of the changes that might happen, there's a core at a policy level where there's that appreciation to say there's something we need to keep in place in terms of continuity, in terms of sustainability. Because I think it's so difficult to start educating people about what you should do with your livestock now that we are in a drought. It doesn't really work. But you build a system. So if you find our extension systems, our extension departments, our research departments, they are building these knowledge resource systems that enable them to say, okay, so if we are anticipating this, what can we do to avert the worst outcomes of a drought and so on? So I tend to think that I think the political space is not that reckless. Yes, there are individual successes to be guarded, but I think the system as a whole, the government system as a whole, is in good appreciation of how important it is to invest even in your health system, in your education system, in your transport system, because they all become part of the one story. Yes.
Before I go to the next question on misinformation, this, because you spoke about politics, let me go here. When most of Africa gained independence, there were 50, 60 years ago, there were the three main problems that we were beating: illiteracy, poverty, disease. Do you feel like we've made much progress in that?
Have we made much progress in
trying to eradicate these issues across Africa?
I believe so. I'm not a health expert. I'm not kind of that development expert. But like I was saying, I think now if you look at, compared to probably 3 or 4 decades, we have a more systemic approach to dealing with these issues. Like the presentation we were having about sleeping sickness and how things were dealt with in Kenya, I think it was. It's different. It's a more systems approach. Going to where, like in the COHESA project, the Capacitating One Health in East and Southern Africa, one of the things we've done is to say, let's talk about One Health from early childhood development level, not just at university level, so that you have citizens that develop with ending of how everything is. And I think our systems have really made that investment. We are still a long way to go, but there's that investment into a systems approach to solving our our problems. Yes.
And now, because you spoke about COHISA and One Health, One Health in Zimbabwe, where are we?
We did a very interesting, even output of a baseline that we did at the beginning of our project, where we were talking what is the state of affairs. And what we found is that in the different sectors, people are doing a lot, but there hasn't been much talking to each other. There's not been a lot of collaborative effort. If you look at the medical health, the veterinary health, the environmental health, even the food systems space. So what COHESA has been working on is to say, how do we bring people together? And we've had a lot of support, even at the highest level, to say, yes, we want to come up with a collaborative, coordinating space with good communication across the sectors. Very soon, I think within the month or so, we will be launching our National One Health Strategy, which really aims to bring everybody together. We have successfully influenced that the curriculum in our education sector, at the teacher education level, because the teacher is a key. If that teacher knows about One Health, he's going to teach, he or she is going to teach to whatever level is the day. And one thing I learned from the education experts through this is the story is the same. One Health is the same. Whether you're talking to an early childhood development person or to a university postgraduate, the story is the same. It's just how you package. That's why they are educated teachers.
Yes.
They know how to package. So we have influenced that. We have influenced even the surveillance, a One Health approach to disease, some disease as surveillance systems with the communities, even some work on Rangelands to say, how do we incorporate this beautiful story of coordination and collaboration within the One Health? How can we make better our rangeland management? So I think Zimbabwe, we've really had a very good time during the COHESA period. And yes.
Yeah, when you get the children excited about it, definitely this is just what you're saying. You get communities knowledgeable and excited about what is going to help them.
Yes.
Now, misinformation, disinformation.
Yes.
I asked you about the post-colonial progress of Africa. At the same time, social media has been born. It's grown into a big giant, and here is misinformation and disinformation. Have you had to contend with instances where you just feel like you can cast social media, in quotes, like where you feel like there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation affecting your work?
Yes, I think for me, on reflection, our misinformation, disinformation comes in when we take a very narrow look at these rangeland socio-ecological systems, whether they are wildlife systems, agro-ecological systems. You cannot tell a complete story by just focusing on one component of that socio-ecological system. So whatever happens to elephants in a protected area or lions must be told in the full context of climatic variabilities, of people who live and interact with those wild animals. What is their needs? What are the needs of the animals? When animals need water in a drought and you provide water for them, what does it mean for people who live outside of that? And sometimes the narrative is a bit distorted. Maybe sometimes looking just a very purely biological perspective, but you have to look at the socio-ecological part of it, even political part of it. For me, that constitutes where then information, you're like, yeah, but you're not giving the full context of the everybody understands why a certain village would take a certain decision, or a certain government or certain local government would make a certain decision.
And while that is now a mission, do you usually have cases of deliberate commercial activists who are like, we have to attack what Dr. Priska is doing?
I think activism is always there. Activism is always there in terms of people come with very different persuasions and philosophies of what exactly should be done to animals, with animals and with people. So that will always be. I think I'm not personally capacitated to be there in the heat of that communication struggles. But what we try to do is to support the systems that bring out, and as you would know, like even our national parks systems would have communication channels that they use, and our role becomes to make sure that those communicators have the accurate information that they take out, including our communities. So when at what point do the communities' voices get heard? Where do they get the space to speak for themselves without necessarily feeling, oh, we are on the wrong side of the law? So our role, I believe, as academia, as researchers, as part of policymakers, is to facilitate all angles to portray the correct information. And you can only portray correct information if that correct information exists.
Yes. I also feel, Professor, if I go on social media right now and somebody has spoken about, about like what you're talking about, buffaloes interacting with cows and transmission. Somebody has said something really wrong about it, and I don't have any information about it. But then I scroll a little bit later and realize that Professor Priska Mugabe has posted something, and I know who she is. I will be more interested in learning about it, and I'll believe her. So the question I want to ask you is, are you on social media? And
yesterday somebody was asked that question, and I like the answer they gave. I said, not to my knowledge. So yes, we are learning. Remember, you read my part of my resume.
Yes.
We've been at it 40 years.
Yes.
When we started, we used to write things and post. Even when you're publishing, you write it out. And then you probably go and pay somebody to type it for you, because we didn't have laptops then.
Yeah.
So the things have changed, and we are also growing. We are also
social media platforms that are coming up, and Prof, I think it should be important for you to just open an account here and there, and once in a while just remind people, what this and this is happening, and this is the facts we have, and this is what we want to do. Yeah, because a lot of us are now glued to our screens.
Exactly.
Do you have a parting shot?
The parting shot is, for me, I think at the core of my heart is to say, let's not approach these natural systems as independent, standalone systems. We really have to invest a lot in understand the complexities, the interconnectedness, because our situations change so fast with climate change, with technological development. Part of the complexity, we have to invest into appreciating those complexities, so that when the information is needed from us, we are well placed to give that guidance. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us here. It has been a wonderful discussion, and there's so much to learn about rangelands. I'm sure you might not have known much about rangelands before this discussion, but you can see there are people who are very dedicated to making sure that the future of Africa will be safe and better. Thank you, Professor, for sparing that time. And we have said we'll follow and see if you join social media. Then I'll give everybody your handle so we can keep learning from you. This is the Africa Science Dialogue. See you in the next episode.